Hello good folks, back with another video. Had some encouraging responses to the last 3 or 4 that I've done, particularly the ones on the Telecaster options and the hollow body options, and also the video I did on what reviewers tend to forget, what they overlook about the common player, shopper, attitudes towards brands, brand snobbery, headstock, infatuation, logo, paralysis of the industry, if you like. I get so many chaps that come over, all they want is Martin, Taylor, Fender, Gibson, and they don't want to hear about other brands. And you know, those are tend to be the types that know everything, and you can't really impart any differing logic to them. And then I have other more open people that you know, are very much open to alternative brands they haven't heard of, new makers, new conglomerates, you know, secondary brands, if you like. After all, most guitars are made in the same 12 factories. There's a lot of co-branding, there's a lot of ghost building. So I very much think that what a guitar says on the label of the headstock is not the primary concern anymore. It's the materials, the craftsmanship, the woods, the way something's built, the build quality, if you like. And this was corroborated by a nice comment from a luthier in Australia who says that he works on a lot of inexpensive guitars and makes them sound just as good as guitars, you know, $300, $400, $500 higher. So you know, it's good to get that corroboration from somebody else, you know, fixing up instruments, looking at many instruments. And a good case in point is this guitar here, which is a classical guitar. I look for classical guitars. I have a few of them. I love to play them. The ones that I tend to pick up the quickest, you know, if I'm coming to my rack of guitars. And this here is a guitar that I bypassed in a flea market 3 times before buying it. And those of you that cruise flea markets and thrift shops and jumble shops and all that, you'll know that there are always these cheap classical guitars, and you buy them and you wish you hadn't. There's no truss rod in them. If the neck's warped or twisted, you know, you're out the money you paid. And there are lots of them, and so they're always a gamble. And this one it was one of those. In fact, it had a lot wrong with it. I fixed this center crack right here, but it also was crushed underneath the bridge, and so I had to put a reinforcement plate under that area. It was a mess. I think the top is spruce. I think the sides are either maple or linden. Looks like maple to me. Really nice wood in the back and sides. And so on the 4th time I went through this local haunt, I picked it up. It was $15 at that point. And I decided, you know, what have I got to lose? I'll restore it. So I did that. And when it came out, when I finished with it, I actually really like the sound. It will never transport to where you're sitting and listening with headphones or through your computer speakers. But when I play this classical guitar, I feel it. There's a wood resonance, there's a deep bass response that I can just feel. It reverberates through me as I play it. It's rattling a bit now, but... It's got a really really good sound, almost a flamenco sound, and it's sort of a flamenco style guitar. But the key thing about this is there's a piece of tape on the inside, masking tape, with the words handwritten M. Cohen. Now, like many luthiers and collectors, I have the guitar guide books. I have 2 massive volumes of guitar guides, both acoustic and electric. And I've been through them not finding M. Cohen maker anywhere. So I suspect that this was a one-off build, or perhaps he built a handful, or maybe he just put his name in it because it belonged to him, and I have no indication of who the maker is. But there are some signs that it's handmade. If you look at the button there, you can see that the purfling is not perfect. It does look handmade, it doesn't look CNC'd. Also, if you look at the faceplate on the headstock, you can very much see hand tool marks, spoon gouge marks and things like that. So it's probably somebody's attempt to make a homemade guitar. Maybe they made one, maybe they made a few. But I've never seen one. I picked it up, I restored it, and it's really fantastic. It's one of my favorite classical guitars. It's very light, which is why I think it might be linden, which is a certain type of basswood, or just a very thin maple. It looks like the neck is mahogany. It's a slightly darker color. But here's an example of a guitar that is no brand. It's no brand at all. It's no name, no sign. There's a name written on the inside. It may be handmade by that person. If anybody has any idea who that might be, it just says M. Cohen, C-O-H-E-N, 1970. So it was made almost 50 years ago. On normal principles. I mean, it has the fairly traditional rosette, the purfling around the edge. It does have kerfling on the inside, kerfing, sorry. Normal bracing, traditional cross bracing, not the newer fan bracing stuff. Perloid tuner, so it's done very traditionally, but it's a really interesting composition, and it plays beautifully. I've never seen one like it. I don't think I'll ever see one like it, so I kept it. But here's an example of not turning your nose up at something you don't recognize. This plays better than a lot of high-end classical guitars that I've worked on. I also have a Martin 66 classical, a Taylor classical, and a couple of other things that I've kept. And this holds up with them. It plays very nice. I tune it down to D. You probably heard a lower tuning because it's a little bit sensitive in the middle where I had to do that. Put that plate in underneath the bridge. So I keep the tension off it by tuning it down. And I love down-tuned guitars anyway. I tune most of my guitars to D or D sharp. I just like a deeper tone. I love baritone guitars. So I tend to down tune at least a half or a full step anyway, certainly on 12 strings. So I like the tone of it at a slightly lower pitch. But I just wanted to give you a quick example of a instrument you haven't heard of, you have no notion of, it's not a brand name. You take a chance on it, you set it up, 9 times out of 10 they're rubbish. This one time I got a really nice guitar that I will treasure forever. I won't sell this guitar. I mean, I really think it's something unique and special. So just to emphasize, opposing brand snobbery. It's not all about 4 brands. They're not even the best anymore anyway. 2 of the worst guitars I've set up in the last 6 months were one of the new Fenders. Awful guitar. I can't remember what series, but it was one of the new acoustics. And then one of those X series Martins, which I thought was really poor. I've had Seagulls and Art Lutheries and Artwoods and sort of smaller mid-brand guitars that played better than either of those guitars. If you've watched my earlier videos, I did a video on wrench guitars, which I'm sure you've never heard of. or G grade guitars, which I'm sure you've never heard of unless you live in Australia. Either one of those played better than the Fender or Martin X series guitar that I recently set up. So the whole idea that you know, the guitar world is still subservient to 3 or 4 or 5 brands, I think is nonsense. And something like this proves it. See you next time.